Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Today we are continuing the Kindle Unlimited recommendation series. I asked on my community post on my page what you guys would like to see, and I believe this is still winning. You guys tend to tie my polls quite often when I ask what videos you want to see, but my Kindle Unlimited recommendations did come out on top with 45%, so thank you so much for voting. I always very much appreciate that. And today we're kind of doing a fantasy romance and kind of summer romance series. When I do these videos, I try to pick things that are newly released and not just repeat the same recommendations over and over. So while there are tons of other Kindle Unlimited recommendations that I have a lot of other videos. I will link the playlist or the videos in the card and down below if you're interested. But for these specifically, I was picking fantasy romances that were newly released, that were very highly rated, that sounded interesting to me. And then we also have some kind of more spicy contemporary romance series where there's a new installment that has just released. So the first book on this list is the kind of book talk darling of the moment in the fantasy romance space, and that is Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry. And when I was doing my research for this video, which I always do, and I always do an accompanying blog post, by the way, down below if you're interested, I'm always interested in why certain things in the fantasy romance genre just tend to blow up out of like absolutely nowhere. This is a very similar situation to Fourth Wing, which makes me very suspicious, by the way. I still think there's something very fishy with the Fourth Wing hype. As someone who has a background in like PR and marketing, is very interesting to me. Shield of Sparrows is from the same publisher as Fourth Wing, and it's a similar author situation where Devney Perry is actually a very prominent contemporary romance author. And then this is their first kind of genre switch into the more fantasy romance. That's the same thing that happened with Rebecca Yarros with Fourth Wing, and it's just obviously something where the publisher is doing that very intentionally. So I am both very skeptical and interested in this. It's like the very typical fantasy romance, cover. This is very highly rated, and also like Fourth Wing, it sounds like it's way longer than it needs to be at 666 pages. But a lot of people are really giving this high praises, again, like they did with Fourth Wing, which I personally found to be extremely bad. But I'm very open-minded. While I have been burned by a lot of fantasy romance in the past, it's still one of my favorite genres to read, and I still do find that sometimes those very popular, like super hyped up fantasy romances still do work for me sometimes. So it's really just hit and miss, but this one seems to be the biggest, newest one in the genre that people are loving. Also now in development as a film. It is a slow burn, high stakes romantasy, perfect for fans of Sarah J. Maas and Rebecca Yarros. Enemies to lovers, monsters. But people say it's a very captivating world. They say the world building is good, the characters are really well written. Some reviews that I looked at also said that it didn't have too much spice, which I think is refreshing to see. Again, I haven't read this, so I can't really say for certain, but I do like to see that. I don't think that fantasy romance inherently needs to be spicy to be good. A forgotten princess finds the strength to tear off her crown and become the warrior she was never meant to be. Says monsters stalk a cursed realm, enemies to lovers. The gods sent monsters to the 5 kingdoms to remind mortals they must kneel. So apparently, typical princess royalty, monsters protecting the realms, breaking the chains of, what's expected of her. Apparently this princess crosses treacherous lines as a spy. I'm very interested to see if you guys have read this. Please let me know in the comments. Let me know what you would compare this to. The way that I kind of make these comparisons is like, if it's more of like a Carissa Broadbent type of situation, fantasy romance, I'm down. If it's more of like a Fourth Wing, Zodiac Academy, From Blood and Ash type of fantasy romance, I'm not so interested. The next book that came up when I was searching for newly released fantasy romance is Inked in Ashes. This is the Inkbound series by Shannon Mayer. This is the first book in a 3-book series. This one intrigued me because it said for fans of Once Upon a Time and Wicked. So it's giving very fairy tale, storybook, witchy type of vibes. I'm obsessed with the show Once Upon a Time. I've actually been giving it a rewatch recently. So kind of like that more Disney campy Wizard of Oz type of vibe, which I think is a really kind of refreshing way to go about it. That's not the very, very played out, sorry, but fae and kingdom and royalty and things like that. This one is about a girl who's trapped in a fairy tale. So again, very once upon a time. I've spent 25 years in the hollow, poor as dirt, cursed with a stepmother, Cinderella, who hates me, and dreaming about a faraway land that I don't understand. The only two things that make life worth living are my falcon, fetch, Maleficent, Falcon, Raven type of situation, and my best friend Molly. So apparently her best friend plots to like find a royal husband at one of these extravagant balls, and the plan goes wrong. There's a glass stiletto involved. Sounds very Cinderella coded, something that I personally really like. So that one sounds interesting to me. This one just came out May 13th of this year, 478 pages, and it's rated pretty highly. And then there are two more that are going to be in the series, I'm going to guess, on Kindle Unlimited as well. This next book immediately made me think of Carissa Broadbent's Six Scorched Roses novella with this cover, This Vicious Dream by Stacia Stark. Just like the font, the roses, all that is a very typical fantasy romance cover, but it is very pretty. Also very similar of a girl like trapped in a kingdom fairy tale type of situation. Someone says that this author has done it again, so I'm assuming that she has done others similar to this. Let's go to her page because I'm just curious. She has also done a Kingdom of Lies trilogy. The first book is A Court This Cruel and Lovely, so very like similar. It's like a court of this, a crown of this, the queen of this. Sometimes when you know you like something, it does follow a trope plot, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be good. So I'm interested. It says she's a best-selling author of romantasy filled with found family, self-reliant heroines, and brooding, grumpy heroes, which I like. As long as the main character, she isn't too like, I'm not like other girls trope. So apparently this one is about a girl who knows the location of a power that could reshape the world, a grimoire that she swore to protect with her life. I love the idea of a grimoire, which if you aren't aware, in this kind of fantasy world, it's like a book of like spells or secrets, how-to book of like the magic and whatnot. Someone captured her. They are keeping her because she knows where the location of this grimoire is. There are enemies who want it from her. Sounds like a dark, brooding man comes in, and he's not here to rescue me. He wants the grimoire for himself, and he'll destroy anyone who stands in the way. So she makes an alliance with like the bad guy. Sounds good, and it seems like this author is well received as well. This one also just came out this last month, May 2025. And I do like to see a 362 page book. And this one is also, again, like I said, in a series where there will be more coming out. So I just like to mention that because sometimes you don't want to get yourself into like another series, but sometimes that's exactly what you want, especially in like the summertime. I feel like that's such a good time to like do a binge of like a fantasy or a romance series. This next book is again very fairy tale coded. Beauty and the Beast meets Anastasia. This is A Thorn in Every Heart by Kate King. 400 pages. This just came out April 2025. Spicy, addictive, modern fairy tale mashup. This is very much giving the Never After series as well by Emily McIntyre, which you guys know I love. Those are all on Kindle Unlimited and I highly, highly recommend them. So this one sounds up that alley. What if Belle never returned to the Enchanted Castle? So like the Never After series, if you're not aware, they are all kind of like loosely based on classic fairy tales, but they're set in a modern world. So this one sounds like the same. After her cheating husband ruins her life, 29-year-old musician moves from Chicago to Pennsylvania, a near abandoned Appalachian ghost town with a fiery history. She has a one-night stand with a wickedly handsome stranger who turns out to be more than she bargained for. And then she's whisked away to the land of the Fae. This one again is in a series or a duology. I'm not sure. It's a 2-book series right now. And the next one also sounds very interesting, which is A Storm in Every Heart. This is the Enchanted Legacies. The next book comes out in September. The next one is A Little Mermaid meets the Princess Bride. I'm very, very intrigued. Like I said, if you guys know anything about me, if you don't, if you're new here, I really, really love like fairy tale and Disney kind of inspired fantasy romance. It just does it for me. It's very nostalgic. I enjoy being able to see those stories reflected in like a new twist and a new way because it's just things that I know I like. Now we're getting into more series that are similar, but I just noticed that new books had come out in this series. So meaning like, again, if you are wanting to get into something to like binge this summer, or you want a new fantasy romance series to get into and you want to just kind of save your coin and read a bunch of them on Kindle Unlimited this summer, I think these are going to be really fun options. This first one is the Broken Bloodlines series, which is a dark paranormal fantasy romance series. So this is the first one. It's a #1 bestseller in polyamory romance, if you are into that. This one is Forged in Blood, Bound in Blood, and Promised in Blood. So again, very paranormal type. This is the vibes of the cover by Sadie Kincaid. So the third one in this one just came out on Kindle Unlimited. I'm gonna just kind of read the general gist of like the series of the first one. Ophelia Hart, a lover of classic literature and unicorns, an orphan with nobody in her corner. It's her loneliness that fuels her life's ambitions to become a social worker and help the forgotten children just like her. So she goes off to university and she draws the attention of 3 ruthless vampires, the Ruby Dragon Society. Ophelia doesn't believe in vampires or in witches or magic or ancient prophecies until she has no choice. So this one, again, does sound quite spicy, even though that premise doesn't really give that away. It is listed as that. What is an HEA? It says book 3 is HEA. What is that? A Happily Ever After. So books 1 and 2 are cliffhangers, and then the last book in the series is a Happily Ever After. Those are all out, so you could read that entire trilogy. Okay, keeping on with the fairy tale Disney retellings, this one, I have to read this because this is what I understand. This is a Sleeping Beauty Princess Aurora retelling. This is The Wolf King, and then there's a second one out as well, which is The Night Prince. So, when a princess is kidnapped by an alpha, war rages between the humans and the wolves. But soon, forbidden attraction starts to grow. So, to me, it sounds like Princess Aurora falls for a werewolf. Kind of love that. Adult fantasy romance for fans of romantasy, werewolves, forbidden romance, and enemies to lovers. 475 pages. This one came out in September 2023. And then let's see, The Night Prince. This must have came out recently because that's what I was looking for when I was doing this. Yeah, then The Night Prince came out March 31st, 2022. For right now, it sounds like it's a duology. So if you're into shifter, kind of paranormal werewolf romance, that one sounds very good and it's quite highly rated. So now we're getting into more kind of contemporary romance series. It's like small town romance, like the Elsie Silver kind of stuff. At least that's what it gives to me. The reason that I am interested in these, even though I don't always love contemporary romance, is because a few summers ago I read the Ravenhood series, which I also rave about a lot on this channel. That was another like kind of contemporary spicy romance series that I read just because it was on Kindle Unlimited and it sounded fun for the summer, like by the pool. And it turned out to be one of my favorite series that I have ever read. Just took me by surprise. Like, I really, really love it. Those are always in my recommendations for Kindle Unlimited in general. But this kind of look and synopsis kind of gave me those same vibes. So we have some more of those kind of spicy contemporary romance series here as well. Starting with the Haven Brothers series. Obsession Falls is the first book in the series. This is a small town romance. He'll risk it all to protect her. Someone is stalking Audrey Young and she has no idea why. Then she meets her landlord and her new neighbor after she, I'm assuming, moves to this small town, who is the big lumberjack type. So it sounds like she's kind of like the girl next door. He's like the small town lumberjack and he's protecting her from like a stalker. It says, grumpy loner meets his match in a sunshiny dog lover who's a little down on her luck. Once he falls hard. Small town romantic suspense with the author's signature humor, endearing characters, and heartwarming ever afters. It says this one can be read as a standalone, but there are 4 other books in the series that are all out on Kindle Unlimited. This is the newest one that looked like just like a typical like spicy small town romance. Whispers and Wildfire. That's kind of triggering for me. I've grown up in California and wildfires are anything but sexy to me. So I'll probably be skipping that one. Okay, so another kind of summery small town romance. This is from the pretty popular romance author Lucy Score. This is Story of My Life, which sounds funny. This one is not in a series yet. Right now it's just the first book is out but this one says Gilmore Girls meets Schitt's Creek in a redemption rom-com. So Hazel Hart is a successful romance novelist until a breakup drives her straight into a writer's block. I love that premise. I love writers and like book lovers in books. I loved Book Lovers by Emily Henry for that reason. Okay, so desperate for inspiration, Hazel impulse buys a historic home online and flees Manhattan to tiny Story Lake, PA. And then as she has to fix up that dilapidated house that she buys out in the small town, there is a 6'3" grouchy contractor who comes in to work on her house, and you know the drill. I think that sounds really cute if you are into like contemporary romances, especially by Lucy Score, who I know is a pretty popular author in the space. She wrote Things We Never Got Over. She was also one who wrote one of those little like Christmas novellas that I talked about in my Christmas Kindle Unlimited book recommendations. Then last on this list is a quite spicy kind of dark romance from an author who I have read a book from them before. This is LJ Shen's. This is Truly Madly Deeply, the Forbidden Love series. So it's kind of this more, you can kind of get the gist of the type of book it is from this cover, but I would not discredit it. If you are someone who, like me, kind of like judge those literally by the cover. The other book that I read, quite enjoyed, it was fun and sexy, and okay, it was the Cruel Castaways series, Ruthless Rival. That's also on Kindle Unlimited. I did not finish the rest of those. I did enjoy the way that she wrote the characters and the way that she did the spice. These are very spicy. It does have a sequel, and then the third book is coming out in August of this year. It sounds like she also does a lot of like second chance and like childhood friends to lovers kind of tropes, which I enjoy. An old flame might just set them on fire. So this one is about a conceited, unattainable, downright delicious Michelin star chef Ambrose Casablancas has one passion in life: food. Women are a distraction. He doesn't do those. And then he basically falls in love for his sister's best friend. She does also a lot of like billionaire romance. Like that's also a similar trope that was in Ruthless Rival. It was something similar to that. I can't remember. Like he was a super successful businessman. But this one specifically says grumpy sunshine, enemies to lovers. This one can also be read as a standalone. I would just recommend LJ Shen if you want like a kind of quick and dirty, sexy romance for the summer that can be read as a standalone, but she does a lot of those kind of series where if you do want to binge them like on vacation or like by a pool, I just think it is so fun. These are the kind of things that I prefer to read in the summer. I'm not always wanting to get into like a super long political high fantasy type of situation in the summertime. I just want something that is like sexy and hot and goes really fast, like really fun, fast paced. So I hope you guys enjoyed these recommendations. Let me know if you've read any of these down below as usual. I will link some of my past Kindle Unlimited recommendations videos. This is one of my favorite services, honestly, ever. I think it's such a great value for money. So as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.